This is Pop the Brown Hornet from out of Stapleton, Staten Island, the Temple. Subscribe to heritagehiphop.com.
Peace and love, everybody. This is Karev from Heritage Hip Hop. And it's very rare when a man can sit down with someone that he wants to build from. So when you have the opportunity, you take the time to enjoy it, appreciate it, and bring your notebook to get some jewels from someone who's very learned. Introduce yourself to the people.
What's going on, planet? This is Pop the Brown Hornet from Stapleton, Staten Island, the Temple. You know what I mean? The capital of Staten Island, the Rock. Pop the Brown Hornet. What's good?
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Heritage Hip Hop. Now, before we get into the interview, thank you for coming on.
Appreciate
I really
you
appreciate you. Thank you. And this is going to be fun. For everybody who doesn't know who Pop the Brown Hornet is, please introduce yourself to them so they know a little bit of your history.
All right. Well, the history basically, I'll start from maybe the wax part, because when you dive into the Staten Island history, I was really around before people started making wax and being known in the industry. I had a lot of street bangers before the W, the Wu-Tang, before Shaheem, before the UMCs, before the King Justice of the world, or what have you. So I've always been around. I predate the wax on Staten Island. The only one that I don't predate is the Foursome D's / the Foursome C's, who was like the forefathers of Staten Island. So with that being said, my first joint I ever came out with that was on wax was Can You Woo 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 and Let's Go to Lap. That's really one of the underground joints that I first ever put on wax. The first joint that I put on wax that I'm known for more worldwidely would be Black on Black Crime. And then the B-side was a GP Connection that I did with a brother of mine called Fuji, aka DSA, Dark Skin Assassin. That happened to be on Smoke Records, an independent. Smoke Records was an independent off of Staten Island. But some of you also may know me from doing a lot of joints with Shaheem the Rugged Child. Shaheem is known for movies, and he was also signed to Virgin Records. So a lot of his early work, if I wasn't involved with, some of his early songs I wrote myself. So yeah, that's a little bit of history. And like I said, I also was part of a group called GP Woo that was signed to MCA Records as well. So, and that consisted of Download Record, Rubber Bands, June Lover, and myself.
Now, that's a musical history. Let's paint the picture to understand who you are and your land. Tell me about Staten Island and what made Staten Island a fertile ground for hip hop.
What made it a fertile ground basically is like Staten Island, I call it the fifth borough. I'm soul brother number one from out the fifth borough. So as we were youngsters and things of that nature, a lot of the other boroughs were getting the recognition that they truly deserve. Staten Island is like the forgotten borough. It's the forgotten rock. So our voices were never really exposed in the development of the early golden era of hip hop. We didn't really have a voice out of the five boroughs. Our voice was the Foursome C's, who transformed to the Foursome D's, and they started singing. So as we looked at the video music boxes, the MTVs, and this, that, and the third, we were bombarded with other areas and boroughs, even Jersey, that populated and saturated the hip hop game, but we never really felt like we had a voice. So everybody was like, it was like an in-house competition, should I say, on Staten Island, where everybody wanted to be the first one to be heard. So you had, you had a lot of MCs, but UMCs was the first ones to break through on Wild Pitch. Wu-Tang wound up coming through, Wu-Tang Clan, should I say, wound up coming through a tad bit later, as well as Shaheem the Rugged Child. Now I'm from Stapleton, so Stapleton is the birthplace of Wu-Tang, and what I mean by that is Wu-Tang was a movement before it became a clan. So Stapleton is where the seed was planted. So it's like when you watch a tree, you see a tree, you only give props to, if you have an apple tree, you only going to give props to the apples, and you're not going to give props to the roots. Without the roots, none of that would even be available to you because it takes the roots to absorb the nutrients or whatever that comes from. So me from being from Stapleton, the grain, the movement, like I said, I'm really from the capital of Staten Island, which I call Stapleton, because we was part of everything. Back in the days, I survived the crack era. So we were street. Everything was available in Stapleton, and we was also one of the forefront leaders when it came to style, charisma, originality. You know, Mac Wiles is out from Stapleton in modern day. You know, if anybody know Mac Wiles, he's a singer slash actor or whatever. So that comes from where I'm from, Stapleton, my hometown.
Okay, and we're gonna flesh that out a little more. But one question I really wanted to ask you, and I want to ask all New York artists is this: every borough has a personality. What is the Stapleton personality, and then how do you define, from your viewpoint, the personality of the boroughs?
Yeah, well, Stapleton to me, like even Staten Island per se, because back in the days when I was a youngster, and even maybe now too, but definitely when I was a youngster, Staten Island was the borough that all the other boroughs wanted to escape from. So people from the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, whatever, they came to Staten Island because Staten Island is a slower paced borough. We nestled in with Jersey, more closer to Jersey really than Staten Island. So it's more of a family-orientated borough to me, as I would say, because you can come from all the other boroughs and can come to Staten Island and you can really get your act together. If you was in trouble, or go to your cousins in Staten Island for the summer. Not that it can't happen there, but it's not in a mass abundance to whereas when you walk out, in the Bronx instead of Third, it's rapping. It can happen on Staten Island too, but it's a lot more segregated. Stapleton, where I'm from, it's more of a, when I was smaller, it was the more faster paced projects on Staten Island. You know what I mean? So if you couldn't get to the Brooklyn, the Bronx, you bring your ass to Stapleton, and parents used to tell other kids from other projects, don't go to Stapleton, because out there they was popping meth tabs, smoking dust, you know what I mean? All kinds of shit. Dust you could really get it from uptown, but Stapleton had it. Meth tabs you could, but Stapleton had it. So it was a lot. Everything was really in Stapleton when I grew up, from the crackhead to the basketball player to somebody that knock it, to the gamer, somebody that game you out your money. Everything existed where I was from in Stapleton, and that was a little bit different than the rest of Staten Island. Not that it didn't exist, but Stapleton had a high voltage of all of that.
For many people who never really went to the land, that's from Jersey, Plainfield kind of sounds like Stapleton, Park Hill, and how the town goes. Plainfield has its rough edges, but it can be a laid back town depending on what side you're on. Now, from the stories that a person would hear who listens to the music, even sees the interviews, we always hear about Stapleton and Park Hill. Plainfield, West End, East End. You know what I'm saying? It's always a us versus them thing. What do you think, or how do you describe the Stapleton Park Hill dynamic?
The Stapleton Park Hill dynamic, it's some could take it as a healthy rivalry, due to the fact that Stapleton Park Hill, we share the same zip code. So a lot of us from youngsters, we share the same kind of like school district as well. So even though we was at different projects, 5-10 minute walk away, we were a competition, because when I was growing up, I grew up underneath the Paris crew. I was personally a gladiator, but I grew up underneath the Paris crew. Park Hill consisted of the Avenue crew, the Rec Posse, BCC, DMD. So they had their own crews, we had our own crews. Now coming underneath the Paris crew was nice with their hands. And when they used to come to the gladiators and be like, yo, you can't lose any fights to anybody from Park Hill. If you did, and you came back to Stapleton, you would definitely get checked. So it was a healthy competition, because we would play sports against them, fight against them, snap against them, try to bag their chicks, so forth and so on. When the crack era came about, it kind of killed that vibe, and then it became more territorial. Stapleton couldn't come to Park Hill, Park couldn't come to Stapleton. There was a lot of in-house wars going on. But what kept a lot of things level grounded was the music, because the hunger in Park Hill and the MCs and the hunger from Stapleton kind of like helped mesh things together. So me and the Wu-Tang movement type of thing, Wu-Tang for me stands for We United to Achieve New Goals, because I know us from Stapleton and us from Park Hill, we bumped heads in a lot of things. If we didn't have competition, we bumped heads. But Wu-Tang was a movement that kind of helped combine us together and make a movement.